It is time for our second big story. That is talking about what you're wearing, really. Is this made in Nigeria?
Well, there are fabrics, fabrics.
Made in Nigeria.
Now, you can't talk about that. The industry garments were not working. So that period of time we had to.
All right. So Nigeria's textile industry once contributed to the growth of the country's economy, employing thousands of people and contributing positively to the nation's GDP.
Now, but the story has changed now. The textile industry, just like the manufacturing sector, is gradually rolling into a doldrum of extinction. And experts say it is due to mismanagement and poor funding. And let's take this report to lay a proper foundation for our discussion.
These key players in several sectors of the national economy commend them on their efforts to fight corruption and tackle insecurity in the country. They, however, also come presenting appeals for intervention of government in the sectors. The representatives of the National Union of Textile Garment and Tailoring Workers are here to ask this government to intervene in the revival of the textile industry. They believe government's patronage of their products can go a long way in reviving the industry.
The VP assured us that they will look into some of these things with a view, of course, to realizing the goals and objectives of the present administration, not only revival of the textile industry, but for employment generation. Of course, it was a positive response from the VP, and we want to commend him for that.
The workers' representatives also believe that getting the textile industry up and running is one of the surest ways for this administration to create employment.
We can patronize our industry alone. I assure you 10 new factories can come back. Zara Industry, which produces tarpaulin, you can't believe it. We have a lot of IDPs now, internally displaced people. Go and find out the tarpaulins we are using. Most of them are made from China. Yet we have a factory that produces this. We do peacekeeping. So government patronage can revive the industry. We emphasize that. Of course, smuggling. You have to fight smuggling, counterfeiting of our products. If you do this, our industry can compete.
On the spot, Vice President Oshibaju assures the union that this administration will lead the advocacy for homemade Nigerian goods. He also discloses that government is looking into how to overcome the challenges of smuggling and power shortage facing the industry. Thus, present administration is looking into several avenues by which a significant number of jobs can be created, and agree that sustaining the textile industry will help in that direction. Maria Olashende, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, let's go on a break, and we come back to introduce our guest and delve deeper into the topic. And don't forget, at the top of the hour will be time for us to go for the news update for the time. Stay with us on TVC Breakfast. Staying with us on TVC Breakfast. Now on this segment, we'll be talking about the efforts by the federal government to revive textile industry in Nigeria. The textile industry in Nigeria used to be the second largest employer of labor in the 80s, but one way or the other, a lot of things went wrong. Joining us now via Skype from Kaduna is a former textile worker, John Femi Adi. John, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, it's nice to have you on. Now, before we go on the break, let me ask you this first question. Between 1980 and 2016, about 140 companies related to textiles have shut down one way or the other. Can you give us an overview? What really went wrong?
Basically, the problem we had with the textile being shutting down is that of policies, the kind of policies we had. Basically, it was as a result of smuggling. I remember then when I was working in Geskia Textile in Kano, I remember the problem we had is the issue of competing with the imported goods. We were producing African print, what they popularly call Ankara hair, at about, say, between a bale, there was about 45,000 naira.
Right, thanks for staying with us on TVC Breakfast. We have John Femi Adi, a former textile worker, joining us from Kaduna on Skype. Now, John, you were giving us a background to some of the reasons why about 145 companies in the textile industry went down.
Yes, I did mention, I said, first, the problem was smuggling, coping with smuggling. Then second, we move into the issue of having adequate LPFO to run some of the parts of the production line. Then later, we had the problem of, the ability to meet up with the demand for raw materials, which is basically cotton. And then later, the issue of power, because it was, graduating from one point of problem to another point of problem. Then power became the major issue, later in the 20s, not in the 80s, between 20 and 20 plus. So we are really contending with a lot of problems. We did contend with a lot of problems between, the 85, 86, 87, basically 88. And then from 1990s towards 2000, it was a very severe period for the textile industry. To be able to cope with smuggling, no matter what kind of policies the government plays in time to ban, or we clamor then in the union to ban importation. It wasn't possible until 2010 when importation was virtually banned. But because of policy somersault, we were getting as worst as 500 naira per 6 years. I can't imagine what kind of raw materials or material lines that were put into producing a 6-year material from China that was sold here in Nigeria for 600, 500 naira. So how do you expect a company here that employs over 8,000 or a sector, 800,000 workers across Nigeria to cope with such kind of competition downline? We had low patronage in terms of people who are buying our materials here, and then we had very high patronage for those who are bringing imported goods at a very cheap, very crazy, I could describe it, very crazy cheap rate. You get it sold on wheelbarrows, you get it all around. I wondered, where's our custom? Where was our custom then? So we couldn't do anything. I remember under Oshomole, there were lots of clamors for these. We fought and fought. We couldn't cope with that. So some of them started laying off staff. And over time, we started closing down. That was basically the problem. It was issue of competition, then the issue of LPO, the issue of raw materials, the issue of power, which is the worst we have now. So reviving the textile industry now will be a risk for me because, one, the issue of raw material is no longer there. We don't produce cotton again. If we have LPFO, do we have enough? Our refineries are not working, so we cannot get LPFO enough to power these mills. Then the issue of power. The textile mill is a kind of sector that runs 24 hours. We run 3 shifts. We have the morning, afternoon, and night shift, and you have to power this with 24 hours, electricity. But if you run generator between 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. the next day, I can't imagine what kind of product you want to produce and sell, and at what price do you sell. So most of them, considering the margin of profit, it was virtually almost zero. So you end up running at a loss. So why do you run at a loss when you cannot meet up with demand? So they laid off and closed down. The textile mills are just the old growth. They are there, structures are there, but they cannot function because the government is not putting the right policy in place to ensure that these textile mills come back on stream. More so that it can employ. Me, I feel it's like playing, this way and then playing the other way. It's quite unfortunate that our federal government has not been able to see the vision and come up with policies that would, engage manufacturers in that sector to come up back on stream again.
All right, John, let me put you on hold and let me go over to my wall so we can have a better perspective of what we are talking about in here. Okay. Oh, this picture looks
lovely
wonderful.
Ankara.
Yeah, just a collection.
Why did you take it away?
I know you would like that. Okay. Now, Nigeria's textile industry is the oldest manufacturing subsector in the country. It was once a booming industry with an annual growth rate of 80s and early 90s. In the good old days, that's about 67%, annual growth rate of 67%. Now, in the early 80s and 90s, what they call the good old days, with about 180 mills, the industry employed over 350,000 workers. Sadly, it is a tale of woes now, as more than half of those textile mills have closed shop and the industry is on the verge of collapse. Let's get into this proper. Now, Nigeria's textile industry, the second largest employer of labor in the manufacturing sector, has witnessed over 3 million job losses and death of ex-workers waiting the payment of their entitlements. 2,800 deaths have been recorded in Kaduna State alone. It gives you a picture of the kind of challenges certainly there are in the industry. Now, the textile manufacturers have blamed the change in fortunes of the textile industry on the influx of cheaper fabrics from China and India and even parts of Bangladesh and Lebanon and so on. John Femi talked about that earlier on. Then, to check this trend, the government in 2010 placed a ban on importation of fabrics from other countries, but the trade policy failed to produce the desired result. Instead, it encouraged smuggling. Now, smuggled textile accounts for over 80% of fabrics sold in the Nigerian market. And the questions are, where is the custom? What is really going on when it comes to smuggling? They've talked about the fact that the borders are porous and something has to be done about that. Tactics really have to change when it comes to that. Now, high cost of financing has largely contributed to the slow death of the industry, as interest rates on the loans from local banks are close to 30%, while similar loans in China could be obtained at less than 6%. Rates making it far easier for Chinese firms to acquire new equipment and produce at cheaper costs. Now, Femi earlier on said that they even sell on wheelbarrows here in Nigeria products from China. So you begin to wonder how cheap it is to produce that in China. Let's get on. Now, another problem cited by textile manufacturers is poor electricity supply, pushing them to opt for costly independent power supply sources. Now, power accounts for about 15% of production costs, according to data from the International Textile Manufacturers Federation. And power is one of the biggest problems analysts and experts have say exist in Nigeria. You fix power, you fix Nigeria. Now, the unavailability of modern equipment is another challenge. Textile manufacturing today is now a highly automated process that reduces labor costs. Now, a modern-day high-tech yarn spinning mill with a production capacity of 1,000 tons per week would need only 140 persons to operate today, as against over 2,000 persons for the old equipment. Sadly, most textile mills in Nigeria still use obsolete machine. If you put this side by side, you see there's a difference. Now, this is just a picture of some kind of modern yarn spinner, and you see the obsolete equipment in here. So when you put this together, you know the difference in the output generally. Let's move on. All right, good. Now, in 2009, the government set up a 100 billion naira textile and garment intervention fund disbursed at 6% interest rate to textile firms in Nigeria. 7 years later, and with disbursement of over 60% of the funds, its achievements are at best modest, if I have to put it that way, just for as a way of capping it in a very modest way. Now, the annual global output of textile firms is estimated at over $400 billion, half of which comes from China. A variety of fabrics are used by different regions and cultures. Now, the most popular fabric type among sub-Saharan Africans is the African print fabric, the one we call Ankara here in Nigeria. Now, this fabric is an integral part of the African culture with annual sales volume of 2.1 billion yards. Now, if we move on to understanding this better, now, according to China Customs, the export value of China's textile and garment alone amount to about $206.5 billion. And investigations reveal that Nigeria imports about 300 billion naira worth of textiles and garments annually. Now, based on trade data from the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria spent about 24.7 billion naira on textile imports between July and September of 2016. That's some huge amount of money. And then let's move on now. China and India account for 60% and 21% respectively of African print fabric production. On the consumption side, West Africa accounts for 65% of the market, with Nigeria accounting for 38% of total demand for African print fabric. Wow. That is really so much. But let us go on the break, and then I come back. I'm going to stay here on the wall. Let's go on the break and we'll come back. John, Femi is still with us from Kaduna. All right, thanks for staying with us on TVC Breakfast. We've been discussing effort by the federal government to revive textile industry in Nigeria. Now, the textile industry in Nigeria used to be the second largest of employer of labor after government. But that was in the 80s and parts of 90s. And after the 90s, things really went bad. We have John Femi Adi with us. He's a former textile worker in Kaduna, joining us on Skype. Now, before I go ahead, Femi, let me ask you this. Now, in the 2017 budget, about 51 billion naira has been set aside in the budget to revive textile companies and all of that. Now, how adequate would that amount go, if you have to give us a picture?
For me, I don't think it's adequate enough for the kind of decay we had in that industry. If the government is serious, it should consider, open up that to a point where we can have close to about 200 billion, and then from there we can start. It's not about funding alone; it's about the kind of policies we put in place. Because they have injected in the past, over about 100 billion, about 100 billion. What has that done? The textiles are still there. Only very few, about say 25, are still operating out of about 180. Funding is not enough. Even if you release 500 billion into the textile industry today, I dare tell you that it will still not function or operate optimally, because the problem of power is still there. Like I did mention earlier, you need to power 24 hours. So, and where you are spending almost half of your cost of production in power alone, then it means what are we doing? So the government should first of all ensure that, yes, if you're releasing funds, for what purpose? That is the question you should be asking ourselves. Is it to give them as a grant to begin to buy generators, to power those industries, or to do what? Or to buy new machines? For me, government should just try as much as possible to ensure that it pumps money into the power sector, or try to improve, the power sector to the point where we can have at least minimum of, say, 20 hours daily. And then the owners of the textile knows that, okay, for 4 hours daily, we don't have, we can power a generator within the certain cost that you can estimate. But until that is done, pumping 500 billion, 600 billion, even 1 trillion to the sector will not help, because you cannot run a company where you don't have power. You
Well, the government understands that.
Materials.
Femi, let me interrupt you. The government understands that the specific amounts that go into power sector for infrastructure development, you have about 34% of the budget going into capital issues, and one of them is the power, so that is understandable. But precisely the question Mike is talking about is precisely for the textile industry. 51 billion naira is going to that sector specifically. And don't forget that the Bank of Industry has been recapitalized based on what the 2017 appropriation bill contains. Won't that help in any way at all? Is that what you're saying?
It will to some extent help, but it will not actually solve the problems we have. There are a lot of problems. Like I did mention, funding per se was not the problem. There are a lot of factors embedded in these that came into what we have today. The closing of textile mill was not because we do not have funding. Yes, it is part of it, but it's not the major problem. Like I did mention, the major problem was smuggling, and I think the government can resolve that problem. If they can resolve it, with the present kind of the Controller General of Customs that we have, I think we can solve that problem a little. The issue of cross border is, for me, if the customs staff are serious, they could solve that problem. But the greatest problem, I will still tell you, the 151 billion, fine, for what? For what do you want to use it to pay?
All right, we have we just had an issue there, but let's get back to the wall so we can bring back Femi. They are joining us on Skype from Kaduna. Now let's give you an idea of some of the mills that went under in Nigeria. We're talking about textile companies that went under in Nigeria. Now, the north, especially Kaduna State, was the hub of textile manufacturing. Now, Kaduna Textile Limited which is the oldest. Ariwa Textile Limited is also there. Nigeria's Ariwa Textile Limited they were all in Kaduna, and at that time they were amongst the highest employer of labor. Nigeria's first indigenous textile factory, United Nigeria Textile PLC, Supertex, Nortex Nigeria Limited, and Finetex Nigeria Limited, Unitex, and Kelco Industry were all located in Kaduna. All right, let's. I guess we have challenges bringing Femi back. We have to end the segment right now. This is where we have to end the segment.
Well,
right?
let's see if we can touch on one or two initiatives of the government in reviving the textile industry. One of them, like you rightly mentioned, is injecting 51 billion naira into the sector. The Bank of Industry has been recapitalized, and this is to help people give access to credit for manufacturers. Then what they're asking for also is an interest rate of single digit at 9%, which I think is huge. Then don't forget that they've been, people are asking, the manufacturers are asking for a rescheduling of the garment clothing textile loan, which was brought on by Olusegun Aganga administration when he was the Minister of Trade and Industry and Investment, and that is also in the offing. So quite a lot of initiatives that Femi, would perhaps we'll have time to weigh in on, but
we'll talk
technology
about it next
says
time.
no this
morning. But the
morning.
Minister of State for Industries has talked about the fact that apart from just giving out the money, there's still so much they are doing. They want to be able to fix the issue of power. They want to be able to touch on infrastructure. You remember Femi also said that farmers are no longer farming. There's no cotton anymore. So raw material is a big problem in there. And then the issue of loans. But we'll talk about that when we talk about this next time. But we'll follow developments in the textile industry, and then we'll let you know how things are. Stay with us now. Shortly, we'll be talking about